Is it recording now? Great, fantastic. Okay, we're on day 6, December 6th. Um, this is a 212th clone trooper right there. And I know he's a 212th Legion clone trooper because of the distinctive markings on his chest, and not because I Googled it. Today's figure is a bit of a sad story. It's a bit of a tragedy and a learning experience for me, involving whenever I almost turned to the dark side of scalping. You see, after the Phantom Menace figures came out, there were a couple more Power of the Jedi figures, or not Power of the Jedi, Power of the Force figures. That was like the first wave that came back starting in 1995. That series was called Power of the Force. And they included these nifty little Comtech chips like the Phantom Menace figures, which basically you could put them over a reader and they would sort of say lines from the movie. It was very digitized. One of the figures that came out for A New Hope that turned out to be very rare at the time was an R2-D2 with a holo Leia, like holographic Leia. That's not going to come up at all. But this is the holographic Leia. I mean, you know where this is going. Here's the R2. And I found it in a store. It was a very hard to find figure, but I randomly saw it. And I didn't necessarily want it because there's only so many things you can do to make a different R2 figure, and this one wasn't that unique or anything. The sculpt was a little bit better, but it wasn't like, it's R2. He's a little adorable trash can. There's only so many things you can do to him. But I bought him anyway because I was like, this one could be worth some money. And I'm going to keep him in the package and see if maybe I can sell him. To the point that I was so motivated by this that I thought about asking on forums, how much would somebody be willing to pay? And I put a picture, a very bad little, like, early year 2000 little bitmap picture above him of Indiana Jones, and they'd switched out the idol from the beginning of Raiders with that R2 figure in the picture, and I was like, hey, just to remind you, this could be worth something. Spoilers, it's not worth anything. I mean, it's worth whatever. But the more I looked at it, and I was like, I feel just bad about this. I feel gross about, wanting to have this figure just for profit, like just to try. I bought it just to sell it. That's crazy. Why would I do that? And then I was looking at some of my other figures, and I had a 3PO that came in a 2-pack with, or 3-pack with Uncle Owen and Luke. And this 3PO is actually what got me to open the R2. And because I usually R2 and 3PO, they're pairs, so they counterpart figures, corresponding figures. And if you look very closely at this 3PO, it's very hard to see, but if you look, he's got this little nipple thing looking right here on his chest. That's his restraining bolt that he had very briefly in A New Hope, because after he was sold by the Jawas, he had that. And that made him unique. It was a different 3PO than some of the other 3POs because he had this little restraining bolt. And then lo and behold, I noticed in his packaging still that this R2 had his restraining bolt. And I realized, well, I can't have the 3PO out with his restraining bolt without his best pal R2. So I did decide to finally open him, and I felt so good. Like, there's nothing really special about him. He's a very simple R2. He's got the little turny head. It makes clicky sounds. You'll probably hear that. And he's got his little light pipe eye. You shine light through his head and, like, lights a little bit. And he's got this little leg. Like, there's nothing that unique about him outside of having his little holographic Leia. But I still felt good to put him with his buddy and that he was able to breathe, even though he's a droid. And I don't think droids breathe or cuddle. But still, it just felt so good having him free. And I do have toys still in packaging. I'm going to try Ceratops right behind me still in the packaging. But this is just because I just have a lot of stuff and it takes time to open it. It's not out of like, ooh, I'm going to sell that in the future for a profit. It is just, I haven't gotten around to opening it yet. And that's it. But yeah, this is R2. And it just felt good to free him from his little plastic prison. And that's all I really have to say. Oh, I do have one more thing to say about this. One, this was kind of a cheat because it is technically 2 figures. That's because I miscounted and picked one too many figures for this list. And two, this 3PO was a last minute swap. I was originally going to use a different 3PO that is probably my favorite 3PO figure because he falls apart and you put him in a little net. But ironically, because this whole vac metallized kind of plastic they used to use on 3POs is so fragile and I'm so paranoid about it, well, now this one apparently also falls apart. So, best of both worlds, I guess. Sorry, 3PO. Okay, that's all I really have to say now. Good night.